The moment Victoria stood up in the middle of my wedding ceremony, I knew my life was about to change forever. But nothing could have prepared me for the words that would shatter 25 years of everything I believed about my family. She had promised since we were children that she would tell me a life-changing secret on my wedding day. And as Father McKenna asked if anyone objected to my marriage to Daniel, my best friend rose from the third pew and spoke the words that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my mother. Isabella deserves to know the truth before she takes her vows, Victoria said, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. Catherine Morrison is not who she claims to be. Her real name is Elena Vasquez, and she's been living a lie for 26 years. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen at the altar in my grandmother's wedding dress, watching as half the congregation erupted in gasps and whispers while the other half sat in stunned recognition. But it was the expression on my mother's face that confirmed Victoria's words were true. The color drained from Catherine's features, replaced by the terror of someone whose carefully guarded secret had finally been exposed. "Victoria, what are you talking about?" I managed to whisper, my bouquet trembling in my hands as Daniel reached out to steady me. "Your mother fled El Paso 26 years ago after her husband died under suspicious circumstances," Victoria continued, her voice gaining strength as she produced a manila folder from her purse. "She stole the identity of Catherine Morrison, a woman who died in a car accident the same week Eleni Vasquez disappeared." Church erupted in chaos as people who clearly been harboring suspicions for decades finally had their questions answered. Mrs. Rodriguez from the flower shop was crying. Father McKenna looked like he'd seen a ghost, and half the older congregation was rising to their feet in shock and recognition. "Elena," called out an elderly man from the back of the church, his voice heavy with accent and years of grief. "Elena, Mia, we've been looking for you for 26 years. I turned to see a group of people I'd never met before, an older Hispanic couple, several middle-aged adults, and teenagers who looked like they could be related to me. They were staring at my mother with expressions that mixed joy, anger, and profound hurt. "Who are these people?" I asked, but my mother had gone completely white and was gripping the edge of the pew as if she might collapse. "They're your real family," Victoria said gently. "Your mother's family. The Vasquez family that's been searching for Elena since she disappeared after her first husband died. My father, Robert Morrison, the man who'd raised me and loved me and walked me down the aisle just moments before, was staring at his wife with the dawning comprehension of someone whose entire marriage had been built on lies. "Catherine," he said quietly, "is this true?" But my mother couldn't speak. She was looking at the Vasquez family with naked terror, as if their presence in our church was her worst nightmare made manifest. "Elena had a daughter when she disappeared," Victoria continued, her voice now carrying to every corner of the cathedral. "A baby girl who would be 26 years old now. A daughter who was told her mother was dead." The implications hit me like a physical blow. If my mother had fled El Paso 26 years ago, if she'd had another life and another family, then everything about my identity was a lie. "Isabella," the elderly Hispanic woman called out, tears streaming down her face. "Mia, you're my granddaughter. We never stopped looking for you." Daniel's hand found mine as the cathedral erupted in chaos around us. My wedding day had become the stage for revelations that would rewrite my understanding of everything: my name, my family, my heritage, and the woman who'd raised me while living under a stolen identity. "Victoria," I whispered, "how long have you known?" "Since I started researching genealogy for my college thesis," she replied, her eyes filled with tears. "I found the death certificates, the missing person reports, the newspaper articles about Eleni Vasquez's disappearance. Isabella, I've been trying to find the courage to tell you for 3 years." As wedding guests fled or gathered in shocked clusters, as my mother sat in stunned silence and my father struggled to process 25 years of marriage to a stranger, I realized that Victoria's promise to tell me a secret on my wedding day had done more than interrupt my ceremony. It had revealed that my entire life had been built on a foundation of lies, and everyone I'd trusted had been keeping secrets that went to the very core of who I was. The cathedral emptied quickly as guests fled the chaos, but the Vasquez family remained. surrounding my mother with a mixture of joy and accusation that made the ornate space feel more like a courtroom than a church. Victoria sat quietly in her pew, clutching the manila folder that had destroyed my wedding and apparently my understanding of reality, while Daniel stood beside me trying to process that his bride's entire identity was apparently fictional. "Elena, why did you leave us?" The elderly woman, my supposed grandmother, approached my mother with tears streaming down her weathered face. "After Miguel died, we needed you. Your daughter needed you. We thought you were dead." My mother, Catherine Lena, whoever she really was, finally found her voice, but it came out as barely a whisper. "I couldn't stay. You don't understand what happened, what I did. I had to protect Isabella." "Protect me from what?" I demanded, my wedding dress feeling heavy and ridiculous as I stood in the ruins of what should have been the happiest day of my life. But it was my father who spoke next, his voice carrying the hurt of a man whose entire marriage had been revealed as an elaborate lie. "Catherine, we've been married for 24 years. We've raised a daughter together. How could you never tell me who you really were?" "Because Elena Vasquez was supposed to be dead," said a man who'd introduced himself as my Uncle Carlos. "She disappeared the night Miguel died, and the police found her car in the river 3 days later. We had a funeral. We grieved for you." Victoria finally approached me, her face filled with the regret of someone who'd carried a terrible burden for years. "Isabella, I'm so sorry. I know this isn't how you wanted to learn the truth, but I couldn't let you marry Daniel without knowing who you really are." "Who am I, Victoria?" "Because apparently, I don't know anymore." She opened the manila folder and showed me documents that painted a picture of a life I'd never known existed. Birth certificates, newspaper clippings, police reports, all documenting the mysterious disappearance of Elena Vasquez and her infant daughter from El Paso in 1998. "Your real name is Isabella Vasquez," Victoria said gently. "You were born in El Paso to Elena and Miguel Vasquez. When Miguel died in what the police called a suspicious accident, Elena disappeared with you. 3 days later, Catherine Morrison died in a car accident in Phoenix, and somehow Elena assumed her identity." "That's impossible. I've seen my birth certificate. I was born in Phoenix to Catherine and Robert Morrison." "Forged documents," Victoria said, showing me side-by-side comparisons of official paperwork. "Isabella, your mother has been living under a stolen identity for 26 years. Daniel finally spoke, his voice strained with confusion and hurt. "Bella, did you know any of this?" Of course I didn't know. But even as I said it, I was remembering things that hadn't made sense at the time. My mother's reluctance to talk about her childhood, the way she discouraged me from learning Spanish despite my obvious Hispanic features, her refusal to have family photographs from before my birth. My supposed grandmother approached me with trembling hands, speaking in Spanish that I somehow understood despite my mother never teaching me the language. "Mia, you look exactly like your mother did at your age. We've been praying for 26 years that we'd find you." "Why?" I asked. "Why did she run away? What was she protecting me from?" The family members exchanged glances that suggested they knew more than they'd revealed so far. It was my Uncle Carlos who finally answered. "Because Miguel didn't die in an accident, Isabella. He was murdered. And Elena witnessed it." The cathedral, which had seemed too small to contain the chaos of revelations, suddenly felt vast and empty around me. My mother had fled not just from her identity, but from danger that had apparently been real enough to justify abandoning her entire family and assuming a dead woman's life. "Who killed him?" I asked. "People who are still looking for Elena," Carlos said grimly. "People who would kill her and anyone she loves if they found out she was still alive." I looked at my mother, who was sitting in the front pew looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The woman who'd raised me with love and devotion had been living in fear for 26 years, protecting me from threats I'd never known existed. "Mom," I said, using the word that suddenly felt both familiar and foreign, "what did you see? What made you so scared that you had to die to keep us safe?" But before she could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Elena's secret is out. Time to finish what we started. You have 24 hours. The wedding that was supposed to unite Daniel and me in marriage had instead revealed that my mother had enemies who'd been hunting her for decades, and now they knew exactly where to find us. After the police took statements and the threatening text message, Daniel and I retreated to my childhood home with my parents and Victoria, the Spanish-style house, suddenly feeling more like a fortress than the safe haven where I'd grown up. My mother, I still couldn't think of her as Elena sat at the kitchen table staring at her hands, while my father paced behind her, 24 years of marriage crumbling with each revelation. I need to understand everything, I said, still wearing my wedding dress because changing clothes felt like accepting that my life had been permanently altered. Mom, start from the beginning. Tell me about Miguel, about your life in El Paso, about why you had to disappear. Elena Catherine looked up at me with eyes red from crying. Isabella, there are things about my past that I hoped you'd never have to know. Dangerous things that could get us all killed if the wrong people find out you know them. The wrong people already know, Victoria said, showing us the threatening text message on my phone. They found us, which means hiding is no longer an option. My father stopped pacing and sat heavily in his chair, looking older than his 55 years. Catherine Elena, whoever you are, I think I deserve to know who I've been married to for 2 decades. Elena took a shuddering breath and began to tell us about a life I'd never known she'd lived. Miguel was a federal agent working undercover to expose corruption in the El Paso Police Department. He discovered that several high-ranking officers were taking bribes from drug cartels to look the other way during smuggling operations. She pulled out photographs. I'd never seen before pictures of herself as a young woman with a man who looked nothing like my father. Miguel Vasquez had been handsome in a way that spoke of danger and intensity, everything my mild-mannered father was not. Miguel was building a case that would have sent a dozen corrupt cops to prison and exposed cartel operations worth millions of dollars. But someone found out he was undercover. What happened to him? They made it look like a car accident, but I was there that night. I saw them run Miguel off the road, and I saw them make sure he was dead before they left the scene. Elena's voice was steady now, as if telling the truth after 26 years of lies was somehow liberating. But they didn't see me. I was supposed to meet Miguel at a restaurant, but I was running late because you were fussy that night. When I finally got there, I saw his car burning and men in police uniforms standing around making sure no one survived. Victoria had been taking notes, her journalism training making her document everything. So you witnessed police officers committing murder. I witnessed corrupt cops eliminating a federal agent who threatened their operation. And Isabella, they knew Miguel had a wife and daughter. They came to our house that same night looking for us. The implications made my stomach drop. My mother had fled not just to save herself, but to save me from people who wouldn't hesitate to kill a baby to eliminate witnesses. How did you become Catherine Morrison? I'd been planning to run for weeks, ever since Miguel told me his cover might be blown. I'd gathered cash, documents, everything we need to disappear. When I saw the newspaper article about Catherine Morrison dying in a car accident with no surviving family, I saw an opportunity. Elena showed us documentation that revealed the scope of her deception. She spent months studying Catherine Morrison's life, memorizing details about her background, even traveling to Phoenix to establish a presence in places where Catherine had lived. But the birth certificate, my social security number, forged by people who specialize in creating new identities for federal witnesses. Miguel had contacts who helped families disappear when cartel investigations got too dangerous. My father was staring at his wife as if she were a stranger, which I realized she essentially was. So our entire marriage has been built on lies? Our marriage has been built on love, Elena said firmly. Robert, I may have lied about my name and my past, but I never lied about loving you or about wanting to build a life with you and Isabella. But the people who killed Miguel, they're still out there. Some of them are dead, some are in prison. But the man who ordered Miguel's murder is still alive and still in a position of power. And if he finds out Eleni Vasquez survived, he'll do whatever it takes to eliminate the only witness to his crimes. Daniel, who'd been quietly processing everything, finally spoke. Isabella, what does this mean for us, for our future? I looked at my fiancé and my parents, at Victoria, who'd risked our friendship to tell me the truth, and realized that I couldn't answer his question until I understood the full scope of what we were facing. It means we need to find out exactly who's been hunting my mother for 26 years, I said. And we need to decide whether we're going to keep running from the truth or finally face it. But even as I spoke those words, I could see cars pulling into our driveway unmarked, vehicles with tinted windows that suggested our time for decision-making had just run out. The men who approached our house weren't the corrupt cops my mother had been hiding from for 26 years. They were federal agents whose badges and credentials suggested we were now under official protection rather than threat. But it was their leader, Agent Marcus Rivera, who delivered news that changed everything we thought we understood about my mother's situation. Elena Vasquez, he said as we gathered in our living room, you've been declared legally dead for 26 years, but we've been monitoring your Catherine Morrison identity since 2010. My mother went pale. You've known where I was for 14 years? We've known. We've been protecting you, and we've been building a case against the people who killed your husband. Elena, the corruption Miguel was investigating went far beyond the El Paso Police Department. It reached into federal agencies, state government, and international drug cartels. Agent Rivera showed us files that revealed the scope of what Miguel had uncovered before his death. The corruption wasn't just local cops taking bribes, it was a systematic network that allowed cartel operations to function across multiple states with protection from law enforcement at every level. Your husband's death triggered the largest internal investigation in D history, Rivera continued. We've spent 26 years dismantling the network that killed him, and we've been waiting for the right moment to bring you out of hiding to testify. Testify against whom? I asked. Against federal judge Raymond Martinez, who's been protecting cartel operations through manipulated court decisions for 30 years. Against Senator Patricia Collins, who's been providing intelligence about federal investigations to drug traffickers. Against people whose corruption reaches the highest levels of government. Victoria was furiously taking notes, her journalistic instincts recognizing the story of a lifetime. So Elena's been in witness protection this entire time without knowing it. Unofficial witness protection, Rivera confirmed. We couldn't bring her into official programs because we didn't know how deep the corruption went within our own agencies. Instead, we've been monitoring her safety while building cases against the people who posed threats to her. Elena was staring at the federal files that documented her hidden life, but the threatening text message Isabella received came from someone within the network who recognized Elena at the wedding. Our surveillance shows that Judge Martinez's son was among the wedding guests. The revelation hit like ice water. Someone connected to the people who killed my biological father had been at my wedding, watching my mother's identity being exposed, reporting back to people who'd spent decades trying to eliminate her. We're all in danger now, I said. You're all under federal protection now, Rivera corrected. Elena, the grand jury hearing begins Monday. We have enough evidence to convict Judge Martinez, Senator Collins, and 12 other officials for conspiracy, murder, and corruption spanning 3 decades. But we need your testimony to tie it all together. My father, who'd been silently processing the revelation that his wife was a federal witness, finally spoke. What does this mean for our family? For Isabella's safety? It means Elena Vasquez is going to have to step out of hiding permanently. Catherine Morrison's identity will be retired, and you'll all need new identities and relocation after the trial. The implications were staggering. Not only was my entire identity built on lies, but now I'd have to abandon it completely and start over as someone else entirely. What about Isabella's wedding? Daniel asked quietly. What about our life together? Rivera's expression was sympathetic but firm. The wedding will have to be postponed until after the trial. Everyone in Elena's immediate family will be in protective custody for the next several months. I looked around our living room, at the family photographs and mementos that represented 25 years of life as Isabella Morrison, and realized that all of it was about to disappear. The house where I'd grown up, the community where I built relationships, even my name, everything would have to be abandoned to keep us safe from people who'd already proven they were willing to kill entire families to protect their secrets. There's something else, Rivera said. pulling out a final file. Elena, we've been investigating not just your husband's murder, but your daughter's parentage. What do you mean? DNA analysis from Miguel's remains shows that he's not Isabella's biological father. Based on the timeline and other evidence, we believe Isabella's father is someone within the corruption network, someone who doesn't know he has a daughter. The revelation shattered what little remained of my understanding of my identity. Not only was I not Isabella Morrison, but I wasn't even Isabella Vasquez. I was the daughter of a woman who'd been living under a stolen identity and a man who was apparently connected to the very corruption that had destroyed our family. Who? Elena whispered. Who is Isabella's father? Rivera's answer would change everything once again. Based on the evidence, we believe Isabella's biological father is Judge Raymond Martinez, the man you're going to testify against, the man who ordered Miguel's murder, and the man who's been hunting you for 26 years without knowing he was trying to kill his own daughter. The revelation that my biological father was the corrupt judge who'd ordered Miguel's murder sent my mother into a state of shock so complete that Agent Rivera had to call a federal medic to examine her. I sat in our living room soon to be abandoned forever trying to process that the man I'd been hiding from my entire life was actually my father. And the man who'd raised me with love and devotion was no blood relation at all. How is that possible? I asked Rivera as the medic checked Elena's vital signs. If Judge Martinez is my father, why did he order Miguel's death? Wouldn't he have known Miguel was married to someone he'd been involved with? According to our investigation, Elena never told Martinez she was pregnant. Their relationship ended before she knew she was carrying his child, and she was already married to Miguel when you were born. Victoria was studying the federal files with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. So Martinez has been hunting Elena for 26 years without knowing he was trying to kill the mother of his child? And trying to kill his own daughter, Daniel added quietly. Isabella, if this is true, you're the daughter of the man who's been the greatest threat to your family your entire life. Elena finally spoke, her voice weak but determined. Raymond Martinez was a federal prosecutor when I knew him. This was before Miguel, before I understood what kind of man Raymond really was. He was charming, powerful, promising to help me with immigration issues for my family. She pulled out photographs. I'd never seen before images of herself as a very young woman with a man whose features I suddenly recognized in my own face. Judge Raymond Martinez looked like me in ways that were unmistakable now that I knew to look for the resemblance. The relationship lasted 3 months, Elena continued. But Raymond was married, and when his wife became suspicious, he ended things brutally. He told me I was nothing to him, that he'd ruin my family if I ever tried to contact him again. But you were already pregnant. I didn't know until weeks later. By then, I met Miguel, and we'd fallen in love. When I realized I was pregnant, Miguel offered to marry me and raise the child as his own. It seemed like the perfect solution, a fresh start with a good man who would love me and my baby. Rivera showed us DNA evidence that confirmed Martinez's paternity, but also revealed something else that made the situation even more complex. Isabella, you're not Judge Martinez's only child. He has 3 other children who don't know about his corruption, and one of them was at your wedding yesterday. Which one? His daughter Maria Martinez Santos. She's a federal prosecutor like her father was, and she's been working unknowingly to build the case against her own father. The implications were staggering. Not only did I have a biological father who'd been trying to kill me, but I had siblings who were working to bring him down for crimes that included ordering the murder of the man I'd believed was my father. Does she know about me? She knows her father had affairs, but she doesn't know he has another daughter. Maria has been one of our most valuable assets in building the corruption case because she has access to her father's personal files and communications. Elena was studying photographs of the Martinez family with the careful attention of someone trying to understand how her secret had remained hidden for so long. How did Raymond never suspect that Isabella might be his daughter? Because Elena Vasquez was declared dead in 1998. And Catherine Morrison appeared in Phoenix with a newborn daughter the same year. To Martinez, those were completely unrelated events. He's been hunting a dead woman while your daughter grew up under a different identity in a different state. But it was Daniel who asked the question that cut to the heart of our current situation. What happens when Martinez finds out Isabella is his daughter? Does that make her more valuable to him, or more dangerous? Rivera's expression was grim. Based on his psychological profile, we believe Martinez would see Isabella as either a tremendous asset or a threat that needs to be eliminated immediately. If he thinks he can control her, he'll try to use her against Elena's testimony. If he thinks she's too independent, he'll see her as evidence of his corruption that needs to be destroyed. So, I'm either going to be recruited by my biological father to help destroy my mother's testimony, or I'm going to be killed by him to prevent that testimony from happening. Unless we can get him convicted before he realizes you exist. The federal protection plan Rivera outlined was complex and dangerous. Elena would testify before the grand jury while I remained in protective custody under my Morrison identity. After Martinez's conviction, we'd all receive new identities and relocation, but until then, I had to stay hidden from the man who was both my greatest threat and my biological father. What if I want to meet him? I asked suddenly. What if I want to confront my father before he's arrested? Rivera's response was immediate and firm. Isabella, under no circumstances can you have contact with Martinez before his arrest. If he discovers your existence, it could compromise not just your safety, but the entire case against a corruption network that's killed dozens of federal agents and witnesses over the past 30 years. But even as I agreed to remain hidden, I was already planning to learn everything I could about Raymond Martinez, the corrupt judge who was my biological father, the man who'd ordered the murder of my adoptive father, and the person whose conviction would finally allow my family to stop running from a past that had shaped every aspect of our lives. Agent Rivera moved us to a safe house outside Phoenix while Elena prepared for her grand jury testimony. But it was the files he provided about Judge Raymond Martinez that revealed the true scope of what I'd inherited from my biological father. The man wasn't just corrupt, he was a psychological manipulator who spent 30 years building a criminal empire while maintaining the facade of a respected federal judge. Your father has been one of the most powerful men in the Southwest for decades, Rivera explained as we reviewed surveillance files and psychological profiles. He's protected cartel operations, manipulated court decisions, and eliminated threats with the kind of systematic precision that suggests genuine sociopathic tendencies. The psychological evaluation made my hands shake as I read clinical descriptions of a man who shared my DNA. Subject exhibits classic narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial traits, capable of extreme charm and manipulation, but completely lacking in empathy or remorse. Views other people as tools to be used or obstacles to be eliminated. Daniel, who'd insisted on staying with me despite the danger to his own safety, was studying photographs of Martinez's public life. Isabella, this man has been living a complete double life for decades. Federal judge by day, cartel protector by night. But it was the information about Martinez's legitimate family that made me understand the complexity of what we were facing. His wife Carmen had died of cancer 5 years earlier, apparently never knowing about her husband's criminal activities. His son David was a successful businessman whose companies had unknowingly been used to launder cartel money. And his daughter Maria was the federal prosecutor who'd been building the case against him. Maria Martinez Santos has been investigating corruption in her father's court for 2 years, Rivera said, showing us surveillance footage of a woman who looked remarkably like me. She suspects her father is involved, but she doesn't know the extent of his activities. She's been investigating her own father? Maria requested the assignment specifically because she'd noticed irregularities in her father's sentencing patterns and wanted to either clear his name or expose his crimes. She's been one of our most valuable assets because her access to Martinez's personal life has provided evidence we couldn't obtain through normal surveillance. Elena was studying photographs of the daughter she'd never known, existed with the careful attention of someone trying to understand how her secret had remained hidden. Does Maria know her father had affairs? She knows he was unfaithful to her mother, but she doesn't know about specific relationships or children. Maria has been focused on his professional corruption rather than his personal crimes. But it was the final file that revealed information that changed everything we thought we understood about Martinez's motivations. For the past 5 years since his wife's death, he'd been systematically tracking down and eliminating every woman he'd had extramarital relationships with. He's been killing his former mistresses, Daniel asked, studying a list of suspicious deaths that all involved women who'd been connected to Martinez decades earlier. 7 women in 5 years, all made to look like accidents or natural causes. We believe Martinez has been eliminating potential witnesses who could testify about his past activities. The implications made my stomach drop. Elena should have been on that list. Elena would have been on that list if Martinez had known Catherine Morrison was really Elena Vasquez. Your mother's stolen identity is the only thing that's kept her alive for the past 5 years. Rivera showed us surveillance footage that revealed how close Martinez had come to discovering Elena's true identity on multiple occasions. He'd been at community events in Phoenix, had even been in the same restaurant as my parents several times. But Catherine Morrison's carefully maintained false identity had protected her from recognition. What changed? I asked. Why is he hunting her now? Because Maria's investigation is getting close to exposing him, and Martinez is eliminating all potential witnesses before his arrest. Your wedding yesterday was supposed to be a low-profile event, but when Elena's identity was revealed publicly, word got back to Martinez within hours. Through his son who was at the wedding, David Martinez has been reporting to his father about unusual events in Phoenix social circles for years. When he witnessed Elena's identity being exposed, he immediately contacted his father with details about the woman who might be the Elena Vasquez they thought was dead. Elena was studying the surveillance photos with growing alarm. So Raymond knows I'm alive, knows where I am, and knows I have a daughter. But he doesn't know the daughter is his, Rivera confirmed. And that's the only advantage we have left. If Martinez discovers that Isabella is his biological child, it will either make him more dangerous or more vulnerable. But we won't know which until it's too late. I could see federal agents maintaining perimeter security, but I knew that Martinez's resources and connections made him capable of reaching us even under official protection. Agent Rivera, I said quietly, what happens if Martinez finds out I'm his daughter before you can arrest him? His answer was honest and terrifying. Then, you become either his greatest weapon against your mother's testimony, or his most dangerous liability that needs to be eliminated immediately, and we won't know which until he makes his first move. The call came at 3 a.m. through a secured federal line that shouldn't have been accessible to anyone outside law enforcement, but the voice on the other end was unmistakably my biological father Raymond. Martinez speaking with the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades manipulating federal systems for his own purposes. Isabella, he said, and hearing my name in his voice was like looking into a dark mirror of genetic inevitability. I think it's time we had a conversation about your mother's upcoming testimony. Agent Rivera was immediately on the phone with federal security, trying to trace the call that had somehow bypassed their protection protocols, while Elena sat frozen with the terror of someone whose worst nightmare was finally materializing. How did you get this number? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear that was making my hands shake. Isabella, I've been a federal judge for 25 years. There isn't a security system in this country that I don't have access to when I need it. Martinez's voice carried the patient confidence of someone who held all the cards in a high-stakes game. But I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to offer you the truth about your family that the federal agents have been keeping from you. What truth? The truth about why Elena Vasquez really fled El Paso 26 years ago. The truth about Miguel's death that goes far beyond simple police corruption. And most importantly, the truth about who you really are and why the federal government is so interested in keeping you hidden. Rivera was gesturing frantically for me to keep Martinez talking while his team worked to trace the call. But I could hear something in my biological father's voice that suggested he already knew exactly where we were and how long he had to talk. Miguel Vasquez wasn't just investigating police corruption, Martinez continued. He was investigating a federal program that used cartel connections to fund classified intelligence operations in Central America. Miguel discovered that the drug money flowing through El Paso wasn't just being protected by corrupt cops. It was being deliberately facilitated by federal agencies as part of a larger operation. That's impossible. Is it? Isabella, why do you think the federal government has been so interested in protecting Elena for 26 years? Why do you think they've invested decades and millions of dollars in keeping one witness hidden when they could have arrested the corrupt cops years ago? The questions were making Rivera increasingly agitated, but I could see in his expression that Martinez was revealing information that contained at least some truth. Because Elena didn't just witness Miguel's murder, Martinez said, his voice taking on the persuasive tone that had probably served him well during decades of federal prosecutions. She witnessed federal agents killing a D officer who discovered their illegal funding operation. You're lying. Am I? Ask Agent Rivera about Operation Southern Pipeline. Ask him about the federal funding that's been keeping your family hidden. Ask him why the charges against me focus on corruption, but carefully avoid mentioning the intelligence operations that Miguel was really investigating. Rivera was shaking his head frantically, but I could see doubt beginning to creep into his expression as Martinez revealed details about federal operations that apparently weren't supposed to be public knowledge. Isabella, the reason you're so valuable to both sides of this investigation is that you're not just my daughter, you're the daughter of someone who witnessed crimes that go far beyond simple corruption. Elena saw federal agents commit murder to protect intelligence operations that violated congressional oversight and international law. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that the federal agents protecting you aren't the heroes they've pretended to be. They're part of the same system that killed Miguel, the same system that's been hunting Elena, and the same system that will eliminate you and your family if your mother's testimony threatens operations that are worth billions of dollars. Martinez paused, and I could hear other voices in the background, suggesting he wasn't making this call alone. You have a choice, Isabella. You can trust the federal agents who've been lying to you about the scope of their operations, or you can meet with me and learn the truth about what you've inherited from both sides of your family. Meeting with you would be suicide. Meeting with me would be the first honest conversation you've had with a family member since your wedding was interrupted yesterday. Isabella, I'm not asking you to betray Elena or abandon the people who've protected you. I'm asking you to hear the complete truth before you decide which side of this war you want to be on. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at Rivera with questions that I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Had the federal government really been protecting us for 26 years, or had they been controlling us to ensure Elena's testimony would support their version of events? Agent Rivera, I said quietly, what is Operation Southern Pipeline? His expression told me everything. I needed to know about whether Martinez had been telling the truth about federal involvement in the crimes that had destroyed my family. The people protecting us might be just as dangerous as the people hunting us, and I was caught in the middle of a war between competing criminal organizations that both happened to wear badges. Agent Rivera's admission that Operation Southern Pipeline was a classified federal program confirmed that Martinez hadn't been lying about government involvement in the crimes that had shattered our family. But it was Elena's revelation about her relationship with both men that made me understand the true complexity of what I'd inherited from my biological father. Raymond wasn't just a federal prosecutor when I knew him, Elena said as Rivera reluctantly provided classified files about the intelligence operation. He was the federal liaison for Operation Southern Pipeline, the man responsible for coordinating between cartel informants and intelligence agencies. The files revealed that Martinez had been recruited by the CIA in the 1990s to facilitate intelligence gathering in Central America using drug trafficking networks as cover for classified operations. His position as a federal prosecutor had given him access to cartel leadership, while his federal connections had provided protection for operations that Congress had never approved. Miguel discovered that federal agencies were not just tolerating drug trafficking, they were actively facilitating it to fund classified operations in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, Rivera explained. Your husband was killed because he was preparing to expose intelligence operations that violated multiple international treaties. So Martinez ordered Miguel's death to protect federal operations, not just personal corruption? Martinez ordered Miguel's death to protect billions of dollars in off-the-books intelligence funding and prevent exposure of operations that could have led to congressional investigations and criminal prosecutions of federal officials. At the highest levels, Daniel was studying the psychological profiles with growing alarm. Isabella, your biological father isn't just a corrupt judge, he's a federal operative who's been killing people to protect classified operations for decades. But it was the DNA analysis that revealed information about my parentage that changed everything once again. The federal lab had been more thorough than Rivera had initially revealed, and their findings showed genetic markers that painted a disturbing picture of my biological heritage. Isabella, there's something else about your paternity that we haven't discussed, Rivera said, pulling out medical reports that made his hands shake. The DNA analysis shows that you carry genetic markers associated with enhanced cognitive abilities and resistance to standard interrogation techniques. What does that mean? It means your biological father was selected for Operation Southern Pipeline partly because of genetic traits that made him particularly effective at psychological manipulation and resistance to stress. Isabella, you've inherited abilities that make you valuable to intelligence operations in ways that go beyond your connection to Elena's testimony. The medical reports detailed cognitive abilities that I'd always taken for granted: perfect memory, intuitive understanding of people's motivations, resistance to psychological pressure. According to the federal analysis, these were normal human traits but genetic advantages that had been documented in less than 0.1% of the population. You're saying I'm genetically designed for intelligence work? We're saying you've inherited traits from Martinez that make you capable of things most people can't do, and those abilities make you valuable to intelligence agencies regardless of what Elena testifies about. Elena was staring at the genetic reports with growing horror. They want to recruit Isabella for intelligence operations. Multiple agencies want to recruit Isabella, Rivera confirmed. The CIA wants her for overseas operations. The DO wants her for cartel infiltration, and private intelligence contractors want her for corporate espionage. Isabella, your genetic abilities combined with your family connections make you one of the most valuable potential assets in the intelligence community. The implications were staggering. Not only was I the daughter of a corrupt federal operative, but I inherited genetic traits that made me attractive to the same agencies that had been facilitating the crimes Martinez had committed. What if I refuse? What if I just want to live normally with Daniel? Rivera's expression was sympathetic but firm. Isabella, people with your genetic profile don't get to live normally. You'll either be recruited by agencies that can protect you, or you'll be eliminated by agencies that see you as a threat. Eliminated by whom? By intelligence contractors who are threatened by your abilities, by foreign governments who want to prevent you from being recruited by American agencies, or by criminal organizations who see you as a potential threat to their operations. Daniel was holding my hand as the weight of genetic inevitability pressed down on us. So Isabella has to choose between becoming a federal operative or spending her life running from people who want to kill her? Unless we can eliminate the threats permanently, Rivera said, which is why Elena's testimony is so crucial. If we can convict Martinez and expose Operation Southern Pipeline, we can dismantle the network that's been hunting your family and reduce the number of people who see Isabella as valuable or dangerous. But it was Elena who asked the question that cut to the heart of our situation. What happens if Raymond discovers Isabella's abilities before you can arrest him? What happens if he realizes he has a daughter who's inherited his genetic advantages? Rivera's answer was chilling. Then he'll either try to recruit her for his own operations, or he'll try to kill her to prevent her from being used against him. And with his resources and connections, we might not be able to protect her from either option. Through the safe house windows, I could see federal agents maintaining security, but I realized they weren't just protecting me from Martinez, they were protecting a genetic asset that multiple agencies wanted to control. My biological father had created me to be a weapon, and now everyone wanted to decide how I'd be used. The federal grand jury hearing began on a Tuesday morning that felt like the end of the world. with Elena testifying under oath about crimes that reached into the highest levels of government, while I remained hidden in protective custody, watching my mother's courage destroy any chance of our family ever living normally again. Through encrypted video feed, I watched Elena finally using her real name after 26 years of hiding detail. Operation Southern Pipeline with the methodical precision of someone who'd been preparing for this moment for decades. Her testimony was devastating. Federal agencies had been using cartel networks to fund classified operations, and anyone who threatened to expose the program had been systematically eliminated. Miguel Vasquez discovered that the DEA was not just allowing drug trafficking through El Paso, they were coordinating with cartels to ensure specific shipments reached their destinations in exchange for intelligence about Central American political movements. Elena testified, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. Agent Rivera sat beside me in the safe house, monitoring federal communications as Elena's testimony sent shockwaves through intelligence agencies across the government. 3 senators are demanding immediate congressional hearings, he said. 2 cabinet-level officials have submitted resignations, and the CIA director is facing calls for his removal. But it was the intercepted communications from Martinez's legal team that revealed how desperate my biological father had become to stop Elena's testimony. He wasn't just fighting criminal charges, he was fighting to prevent exposure of operations that could bring down dozens of federal officials and cost intelligence agencies billions in funding. Martinez is offering to trade information about other federal operations in exchange for immunity, Rivera said, reading encrypted messages that suggested my biological father was prepared to expose even more government crimes to save himself. Daniel, who'd been monitoring news coverage of the hearings, looked up from his laptop with alarm. Isabella, the media is starting to connect Elena's testimony to other federal investigations. This isn't just about Martinez anymore, it's about reforming intelligence operations that have been operating outside congressional oversight for decades. The scope of what Elena's testimony was exposing made me understand why so many agencies had been interested in keeping our family hidden. We weren't just witnesses to corruption. We were evidence of systemic criminal activity that reached into every level of federal law enforcement. But it was the emergency call from Rivera's supervisor that revealed how dangerous our situation had become. Martinez has disappeared from federal custody, Rivera said after hanging up, his face pale with implications I didn't want to consider. He was supposed to surrender this morning, but his lawyers say they don't know where he is. He's coming for us, Elena said quietly. He's coming for Isabella, Rivera corrected. Our intelligence suggests Martinez has finally put together that Isabella is his daughter, and he's decided she's either going to help him escape or become evidence that needs to be eliminated. The federal protection plan Rivera outlined was terrifying in its scope. I would be relocated immediately to a classified facility while Elena continued her testimony under maximum security. Daniel would be given a new identity and moved to a different location entirely, with no contact allowed between any of us until Martinez was captured or eliminated. We're being split up permanently, I asked. You're being split up until the threat is neutralized, Rivera said. Isabella, your genetic abilities make you too valuable to too many people for you to live openly. Even after Martinez is captured, you'll be a target for recruitment or elimination for the rest of your life. Daniel was staring at me with a dawning realization that our life together was ending before it had properly begun. So the wedding yesterday was the last normal day we'll ever have? The wedding yesterday was the day Isabella's true identity was revealed, Rivera said. From now on, she's not just Elena's daughter, she's Raymond Martinez's daughter with enhanced cognitive abilities that make her one of the most valuable potential assets in the intelligence community. But it was the final piece of information Rivera shared that made me understand the choice I was really facing. The federal government wasn't just offering protection, they were offering recruitment into intelligence operations that would use my inherited abilities for the same kind of classified missions that had destroyed my family. The CIA wants you for deep cover operations, Rivera said. Your genetic abilities combined with your family connections would make you effective at infiltrating criminal organizations that normal agents can't access. And if I refuse? Then you spend the rest of your life running from people who want to recruit you, eliminate you, or use you for their own purposes. Isabella, people with your abilities don't get to choose normal lives. As federal agents prepared to move me to a location that Daniel and Elena wouldn't know about, I realized that my mother's courage in testifying has saved the country from systematic corruption, but doomed our family to permanent separation. The truth has set us free from hiding, but it had also ensured that we could never be together again. My biological father had created me to be a weapon, and now I had to decide whether to let the government use me as he'd intended, or find some other way to survive in a world where my genetic inheritance made me too dangerous to live freely. Judge Raymond Martinez found me on my 26th birthday, exactly 1 year after the wedding that had destroyed my family and 6 months after his conviction for corruption and murder had supposedly ended our nightmare. I was living under my third false identity in a small Montana town, working as a librarian and pretending to be someone named Sarah Williams, when my biological father walked into the library at closing time and spoke the words that revealed the final truth about our family. "Hello, Isabella," he said, looking older and more dangerous than his federal photographs, but unmistakably carrying the genetic features I saw in my own reflection. "Happy birthday, daughter." I reached for the panic button that would alert federal protection, but Martinez raised his hands to show he was unarmed and spoke words that stopped me cold. "I'm not here to hurt you, Isabella. I'm here to tell you the truth about why Elena really ran away 26 years ago. The truth came out in your trial. You ordered Miguel's murder to protect Operation Southern Pipeline." "I ordered Miguel's murder to protect you," Martinez said, sitting in a library chair with the calm confidence of someone who planned this conversation for months. "Isabella, everything Elena told the federal agents was true except for one crucial detail: she wasn't fleeing from me. She was fleeing with me." The words hit like ice water, rewriting everything I believed about my parents' relationship. "That's impossible. Elena testified that you threatened her family." "Elena testified to what federal agents told her to say to ensure my conviction," Martinez said, producing documents that looked like federal files but contained information I'd never seen before. "Isabella, your mother wasn't my victim, she was my partner in Operation Southern Pipeline. And when the program was exposed, we made a choice to protect you that required one of us to disappear." The files he showed me painted a picture completely different from what I learned during his trial. Elena Hadden Vasquez hadn't been an innocent witness to federal corruption. She'd been a CIA operative working with Martinez to coordinate intelligence operations using cartel networks. Elena was recruited by the agency when she was 22 because of her family connections to trafficking organizations in Central America. Her relationship with Miguel was an assignment. She was supposed to monitor his investigation and ensure it didn't expose operations he wasn't cleared to know about. "You're lying. I'm telling you what the federal agents couldn't reveal during my trial because it would have exposed Elena as a federal operative and compromised dozens of ongoing intelligence operations." Martinez showed me surveillance photos that documented Elena's training and operations over a period of several years before my birth. When Elena became pregnant with my child, it complicated her assignment because she developed genuine feelings for Miguel. She was supposed to eliminate him quietly, but instead she warned him about the operation and suggested they flee together. The implications were staggering. My mother hadn't witnessed Miguel's murder, she'd been ordered to commit it, and when she'd refused, both she and Miguel had become targets for elimination. "So you killed Miguel to protect Elena?" "I killed Miguel because Elena couldn't complete her assignment, and federal supervisors were preparing to eliminate both of them for compromising the operation. By making Miguel's death look like I was protecting cartel interests instead of federal operations, I gave Elena the cover story she needed to disappear with you." Martinez produced a final piece of evidence that shattered my understanding of everything: a video recording of Elena's actual CIA debriefing, where she thanked him for saving her life and promised to raise their daughter with the skills she'd need to survive in their world. "Elena didn't steal Catherine Morrison's identity to hide from me, Isabella. She stole it because I provided her with the resources and connections to disappear completely." We've been protecting you together for 26 years, maintaining the fiction that we were enemies while ensuring you'd be safe from the agencies that wanted to recruit or eliminate you. But Elena's testimony was part of a plea arrangement that gave her immunity in exchange for my conviction. Isabella, your mother testified against me to protect you, but everything she said was carefully crafted to expose Operation Southern Pipeline without revealing her role in it. Through the library windows, I could see federal agents positioning themselves around the building, but Martinez seemed unconcerned about the approaching arrest that would send him back to federal prison. Why tell me this now? Because the federal agencies that have been protecting you are the same agencies that want to recruit you for operations similar to what Elena and I did for 20 years. They've been using your genetic abilities and family connections to assess your potential as an intelligence asset. Martinez stood and moved toward the library exit, but paused to deliver his final revelation. Isabella, the enhanced cognitive abilities you inherited aren't natural genetic traits. They're the result of experimental programs that created children like you for intelligence operations. Elena and I were both enhanced operatives, and you're the next generation of a breeding program designed to create perfect intelligence assets. What are you saying? I'm saying you were engineered to be the perfect spy, and the federal government has been manipulating your entire life to prepare you for recruitment into classified operations. The wedding interruption, the family revelations, the protective custody, all of it was designed to isolate you from normal relationships and make you dependent on federal agencies for survival. As federal agents entered the library to arrest Martinez for violating his custody arrangements, he spoke his final words to me. You have a choice, Isabella. Accept recruitment into the programs that created you, or use the abilities you inherited to disappear completely and build a life they can control. How? Ask your mother about Project Nightingale. Ask her about the other enhanced children who've successfully disappeared from federal monitoring. And ask her why she really married Robert Morrison, because it wasn't for love, daughter. It was to give you a normal father who could teach you to be human instead of just an intelligence asset. Martinez allowed federal agents to arrest him without resistance, but his revelations had destroyed my understanding of my family once again. Everyone I trusted had been lying to me. But this time the lies weren't just about protecting me, they were about preparing me for a future I'd never chosen. I was the product of a federal breeding program, and everyone in my life had been manipulating me toward recruitment into intelligence operations that would use my engineered abilities for classified missions. The question now was whether I had enough of my humanity left to choose a different path, or whether 26 years of manipulation had already transformed me into exactly what the government had designed me to be.